It's time for the 2025 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Today we're going to preview the entire first round, go through each series, look at all the numbers, give you my thoughts and predictions as well, coming up next. Well, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, it's an exciting time to be a hockey fan right now. The 2025 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs are about to begin. All of the matchups are now set, and now we can look forward to an exciting few weeks of the first round here, which is, in my opinion, the first round is usually always the best part of the playoffs. Obviously, you have players that are, obviously wanting to win. A lot of key, important rivalry matchups here in this year's edition of the playoffs. And by the end of the first round, some of these teams are kind of beaten up and battered. And, well, obviously health plays a big role moving forward as well sometimes on who wins. So today we're going to take a look at the 8 series. I'll give you a quick preview and give you my thoughts and predictions on who will win each series. Now, of course, I would like you to join our Top Shelf Hockey community on the NHL Bracket Challenge through the NHL website. I will have a pinned comment down below here with the link to it. If you haven't already done so, consider joining our community just for fun to see who can best predict the outcome of the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. So now let's begin. We're going to go conference by conference. We're going to start with the East, look at the 2 matchups that are on the Atlantic side of the bracket, then we'll go to the Metro, and so on. So let's get off first here. The Eastern Conference Atlantic Division, one of the most anticipated matchups here in a long time. Toronto, who won the division, against Wildcard 1, Ottawa Senators. The Battle of Ontario is back for the first time in over 20 years. These two teams had some epic battles in the early parts of the 2000s. During those matchups, it was the Toronto Maple Leafs did have the edge. Of course, that doesn't play a role in today's matchup, given how long ago that was. But there were many times the Senators were favored in those matchups, and Toronto pulled out on top. Could it be a little reverse fortune the other way around this time? Well, let's get into the numbers and see here. Let's compare the 2 teams based on their regular season results. Looking at goals for, the Toronto Maple Leafs were a little bit more potent offensively. They averaged 3.24 goals per game, where the Senators averaged 2.9 goals per game. Goals against, the Senators have a slight edge there. They've improved dramatically on team defense and goaltending this year. The Sens are allowing an average of 2.79 per game, where the Leafs are pretty good, not far behind, 2.83. Power play wise, both have a really good power plays, really good results that way. The Leafs slight edge there, 25.2%, 7th best in the NHL. The Senators were 23% for 14th. They've actually got the 3rd most total power play goals of 61 in the NHL. The Senators' percentage, the only reason it's not higher is they ended up with more power play opportunities than Toronto this year, but 61 power play goals is certainly quite an accomplishment. Penalty killing for both teams, not exactly their strong suit, but I feel in some cases as the year went on, you could see some improvements, especially on the Senators side. They finished with 78%, which doesn't sound great, but in today's NHL, it's actually right around league average. It's 17th best in the NHL. The Leafs were 77.9, so not far behind at all, at 19th best. So not a great deal of difference between the PKs. Both can be a little bit dangerous offensively, but I think a slight edge goes to Ottawa in that case. They have scored 9 shorthanded goals this year, which was tied for 5th most in the NHL. The Maple Leafs had 6 shorthanded goals, which puts them closer to the middle of the pack at 14. Obviously, face-off, both teams are very strong in the face-off circle, both over 53% this year. The Sens at an even 53, the Leafs at 53.7, so not much difference there. Goaltending-wise, it's going to be interesting. We're expecting, at least as I record this video, which is a couple days before the game start, but we're expecting Anthony Stolarz to most likely be the Game 1 starter for Toronto. We know Joseph Woll has had a decent year as well, and will certainly, it's possible he gets a chance to play, but I think it's going to be Stolarz net to start. He finished with a 2.21 goals against and a .923 save percentage. That's over 33 games. Now, on Ottawa's side, we know it's going to be Linus Ullmark, who had a .267 goals against and a .911 save percentage. So the numbers for Stolarz do look a little bit better. They are slightly more positive, but Ullmark also played 10 more games. So obviously bigger sample size. You would think if Stolarz played 10 more games, his numbers could have differed a little bit too. Not to say that they would have necessarily gone down, but you know what I'm saying here. It's not apples for apples in that case. But Ullmark, on the other hand, has a lot more playoff success and experience in his past. I know Stolarz was part of the Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers last year, but obviously it was Bobrovsky's net. Stolarz really was more of a passenger on that team, let's be honest. He had a good regular season, certainly played his role for the Panthers, but wasn't the main starting goaltender when it came down to it. Now, head-to-head this year, the Senators have owned the Maple Leafs, winning all 3 matchups. And to be honest, it's not like they blew them away, but they didn't really win with too much difficulty, outscoring Toronto 9-3. On the power play, the Leafs had no power play goals against the Sens, where the Sens did have a couple power play goals against Toronto. Obviously, the Leafs... In the past, the Leafs have had trouble scoring into big, important playoff games. We'll see. Obviously, Ottawa is a lot better defensively than they have been in recent years, using the Pinto, Greg Amadio line as a shutdown line. Sanderson, Zubby, your shutdown D, Ullmark between the pipes. It's going to be interesting for sure. One of the reasons why I think Ottawa wasn't more offensive this year is they were one of the most potent offensive teams for creating chances. They had one of the lower shooting percentages, which was, I'm not sure what the reason for that is. You'd have to dig a little deeper, but they only had a 9.9 shooting percentage, 25th in the league. So if they were able to capitalize just a little bit more on their chances, it could have made a significant difference, and it could in this series as well. Give the Leafs a little bit of credit. They're obviously playing a little bit different style under Craig Berube, a little bigger, a little heavier than years past. Their D's a little, especially with the D-core, in that sense, a little bit more north-south up front. So I think the Leafs will probably theoretically be better built for playoffs, but I really like how the Sens team is built as well for playoff hockey. To me, like I said, they've got a good combination of things here, and veterans and young kids in the world. They're not so young anymore, but inexperienced in that sense with your Timmy Stützles and your Shane Pintos and Jake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk's, who've been putting in the work for the last anywhere from 4 to 7, 8 years, depending on level of experience here and trying to get in here. So, and as we saw at the Four Nation tournament, Brady Tkachuk is going to be an absolute animal and could very well be an X factor here in this series. To me, if Ottawa's going to win, Sanderson, Zub, and the Pinto line has to be able to neutralize Toronto's more potent players. Obviously, they, with comes to Matthews, Marner, Nylander especially, they have a little bit more of that higher end potency on the offense. And like I said, unfortunately though, they don't have a great history of being able to unleash that in the playoffs. So the Battle of Ontario is going to be fun. I really like how Ottawa matches up to Toronto, given Ottawa's dominance of the regular season series, which is not always a factor, but and everything like that. And given Toronto's blunders in years past, I am picking Ottawa to win this series. I think it's going to be an upset. The Sens will definitely be the underdogs going in. I'm predicting Sens in 7. But, to be honest, the Sens have a lot of, as much as they do have a decent amount of veterans and Stanley Cup pedigree on their team with the guys they've brought in, their young players are certainly, inexperienced in that sense, and it could be a factor here. So we'll see. The Leafs really should win, but I think the Sens can upset them. They've had their number all year long. So we'll see where that goes. The other big battle in this Atlantic Division here is going to be the battle of the state of Florida with the Lightning and the reigning Cup champion Florida Panthers. Now, the Panthers ended up finishing in 3rd place, the Lightning in 2nd, so Tampa has home ice advantage here. The Florida Panthers have had a unique season, taking a little bit of a step back in their regular season success, and certainly have had a lot of injuries to deal with this year, a lot of uncertainty. They obviously have a different cast of players compared to the Cup-winning team last year. Due to cap situations, they certainly had a decent amount of turnover. So it's a little different looking this year, and we haven't had this battle here for a couple of years, but we'll see what happens. Let's take a look at the numbers here and see what we think. Goals for Tampa, certainly arguably the most potent team in the NHL, averaging 3.59 goals per per game, where the Panthers are averaging 3.02. Goals against is 2.64 per game for Tampa, 2.69 for Florida. So slight edge in both scenarios for the Lightning. Obviously, with a team plus minus over plus 75 is absolutely crazy this year. The Lightning are one of the top power play teams in the league, 26.3%, so it's top 5. The Panthers are still pretty good as well, 23.9 for 12th best. On the PK, we have an 81.1% success rate for the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is phenomenal, near the top of the league, whereas the Panthers are 80.8, which is top 10 as well. So certainly both strong on the penalty kill, and they're both dangerous on the penalty kill as well, with the Panthers actually producing 12 shorthanded goals this year, which was number 2 in the league, and the Lightning are right behind them with 11. So you definitely don't really want to give either power play a lot of work, but you have to be careful with that power play because you can get burned on it as well. Obviously, a face-off circle, a little bit of a slight edge to the Lightning, just over 50%, whereas the Panthers are 49.4%. Goaltending-wise, you got Vasilevsky against Bobrovsky. Vasilevsky certainly had the better season and would look to have the edge right now, putting up a 2.2 goals against and a 921 save percentage, whereas Bob has had 2.44 and a 906. So statistically speaking, the Lightning have the edge in most areas. On the head-to-head series this year, like I said, and I know that doesn't always play a role, but it's an even series anyways, 2 wins apiece. So we're not getting really much of an indication from that point. And although in the last game as well was a 5-1 Tampa win, but there was nowhere near the normal Panther lineup. For me, the Panthers' health concerns are a major issue and concern. We've had Matthew Tkachuk out since 4 Nations. Obviously, Barkov has been in and out. We don't know 100% that Tkachuk is going to play in Game 1, although I suspect that the odds are decent he will. We know Aaron Ekblad is going to miss at least a couple games due to his suspension. And, well, to me, this decor in Florida is not quite the same as the one that won the Stanley Cup last year. So Tampa has been, like I said, the better team, the healthier team in most aspects of the game. But obviously, if you take a look at the Florida Panthers and what they've gone through last year, it's hard to count them out. The Panthers also have played a ton of hockey. Obviously, they won the Cup last year, but the year before that, they were the runners-up in the finals. So they've had 2 back-to-back short summers here. And like I said, I do wonder if it's kind of catching up to them in a sense here. The Florida Panthers also the second most penalized team in the NHL, which could go against them. Discipline will be a key part of this series because things are going to get heated, I think, pretty quickly. It's just not a good combination though. If you got Florida's lack of discipline and Tampa being the highest scoring team and one of the best power plays, I honestly think the Lightning are going to oust the defending Cup champions. And I am picking the Tampa Bay Lightning to win this series in 6 games. Now let's jump over to the Metropolitan Division and take a look at the 2 matchups there. Now the 2 versus 3 matchup here is the Carolina Hurricanes against the New Jersey Devils. These 2 teams have been, pretty much locked in against each other for a large chunk of the regular season here. Even though it hasn't been too long that it's been official, we've kind of known this for a long time. So let's take a look at this matchup here by the numbers. The Carolina Hurricanes are scoring an average of 3.21 goals per game, 8th best. New Jersey's 2.96. Goals against is an average of 2.7 for Carolina, 2.64 for New Jersey. Obviously, the change between last year's goaltending and this year's goaltending in New Jersey has made a significant difference in improvement. The power play, not great on Carolina's side, 18.6% compared to 27.9% for the New Jersey Devils. Now, of course, keep in mind, Jack Hughes would have played a big role in that early on, and he is not there. He's been out for some time and will not be back during the playoffs due to that significant shoulder injury. But if there is a power play, that the Canes can shut down, I think it's New Jersey. They have the best penalty kill in the league. Over 84, just shy of 85%. So Carolina does not give you much. And this Devils power play could run into some challenges, even though they've had a really good season. The Devils PK also pretty strong at 82.6. So you factor in the Canes' anemic power play with the Devils' strong penalty kill, and then you get a really strong Canes PK. Special teams could play a role. Like Carolina's going to have to do most of their scoring at 5-on-5. I suspect that they would, their history is going to show that the power play is not going to likely win them some games, although it needs to get better if they're going to have a shot to go deep in the playoffs. That's just facts. I mean, power play and special teams do play a role. You don't generally see teams go too deep with an anemic power play. So obviously that's an area of focus for Carolina. But for this series, obviously the Devils might have an edge on the special team side of things, but it's going to be, challenging to get through this really tough defensive structure for the Carolina Hurricanes when it comes to New Jersey. And on the face-off side of things, big difference here. Major advantage to Carolina, 52.6% compared to only 49.8% for the Devils. Head-to-head, they've split, so that's obviously not going to give us much to go by. The Devils are expecting Dougie Hamilton to be available. We'll see if he actually is, but the latest comments from Sheldon Keefe lead us to think he will play. Jack Hughes, of course, on the other end, as I said, definitely not. Shoulder surgery. We'll see him in the fall. Goalie matchup here. We got Jacob Markstrom, who's got a .900 save percentage and a 2.5 goals against, with 26 wins and 4 shutouts, against Freddie Anderson, who missed a large chunk of the year. I suspect Anderson will get the start, but he's rocking a 2.29 and a 9.07 with 13 wins and 1 shutout. If they go with Kochetkov, he's got a 2.59 and an 8.98. So I do wonder if, even though Kochetkov has played a lot more this year, if Anderson will get the nod in Game 1. Otherwise, it would be a slight edge to the Devils in goaltending. But Freddie Anderson, based on how he's played at this point, looks like he might be able to outduel Jacob Markstrom. But we'll see. Jake Allen's had a fine season for the New Jersey Devils here as well. So again, we'll have to wait and see where that goes. But goaltending, we know, is going to be very important on both sides. It might not be, unless one player, one goalie, like really either drastically under or overperforms than what we're expecting, it might be pretty close and may not be the deciding factor here. So, obviously neither team has been overly hot down the stretch and playing like 500 hockey in the last, 10, 12 games. So there's really nothing significant that way. The Canes, though, do have home ice advantage and have one of the best home records in the NHL with a 31-9-1 record this year. I am picking Carolina to win this series. I do think the Devils are probably going to give them a tougher time than some people think. I've seen other predictions predicting the Canes in 4 or 5. I think it's going to go at least 6. I think the Devils are going to be able to put up a good fight, but I think, overall, the Carolina might, I don't know that they can go on a deep run this year, but I think they can get through at least this round. But it's going to be a defensive struggle here, and Carolina, I think, has to win by scoring more 5-on-5, which is going to be more suited for them, and keeping their discipline out of the box and killing off New Jersey penalties or power plays when they get those opportunities. Now, lastly, here we have the Washington Capitals, the top seed in the Eastern Conference, winning the Metro Division against the Montreal Canadiens, who squeaks in on Game 82. The Canadiens are the last team in the NHL to qualify for the 25 Stanley Cup playoffs. They had a few opportunities, but almost crumbled under the pressure, but got it done against an interesting Carolina team who had a lot of veteran and star players resting, which made their lives a little bit easier, but they still had to get the job done, and they did so, clinching the final playoff spot in their final game in front of their home fans of the regular season. Now let's take a look at the Washington Capitals against the Montreal Canadiens here by the numbers, and let's compare to see if this is a mismatch or could we have an upset, or how is this going to go. The Washington Capitals, definitely the stronger offensive team. They're averaging 3.5 goals a game, where the Canadiens are averaging 2.95. So the Caps, second highest scoring team against the 18th highest. Goals against, 2.77 average for the Capitals versus 3.2 in Montreal. Again, advantage Washington. The power play, 23.3% for the Capitals, 14th best, versus 20.4 in Montreal, 21st best. So again, advantage Washington. The penalty kill, both pretty respectable. Capitals were 4th best in the league, 82.3 versus 80.9 in Montreal. Both very strong in the face-offs, but not much better than league average, though. 50.2% in Washington, 50.8 in Montreal. Slight edge to the Canadiens. The head-to-head series, The Capitals won 2 out of the 3 matchups this year, with the one Canadiens win coming in overtime. So the Capitals were 2-0-1 versus Montreal this year. So obviously not really a situation where it was very, very dominant, but Washington certainly handled their business against the Canadiens this year. Now, statistically, Washington has the edge in pretty much every category, or at least everyone that's really relevant here, in my opinion. However, I think there's a different story being told. Montreal, along with some of the other wildcard teams like St. Louis and Ottawa, have been some of the hottest teams and most productive and successful teams in the entire NHL, really dating back over the past 2 months, especially since the Four Nation break, and in some cases with other teams even a good big stretch before the Four Nation break. So looking at the whole season, to me, doesn't really tell the complete story for some of these teams. Like, I don't think like teams like Montreal, Ottawa, or St. Louis are the same team now that they were at the beginning of the year, or even 2 months into the season. So I don't know that looking at everything is going to give you the full story. So for me, Montreal, one of the hottest teams here in the past couple months. They had to work their tails off just to be in the spot. Secondly, a concern with Washington is that they've had an excellent bounce-back season. They're well coached under Spencer Carberry. Obviously, Alex Ovechkin breaking the all-time goal record previously held by Wayne Gretzky was the biggest story of the year. And I think there was a lot of time and effort and energy put into that, not only by Ovi, but by his teammates as well. So, ultimately, the Caps have not really been great down the stretch here since he broke that record. Not long after that, they got bombed by Columbus in back-to-back games. They had a home-and-home with the Blue Jackets. They lost both and were outscored 11-1. I mean, that's not good. They're 4-6-1 in their last 11 games. Certainly some concerns. They have a few injuries, nothing too high ranking as far as terms of important players, but Alexi Protas, who had a 30-goal season, is injured right now. Their goaltending, Logan Thompson was one of the top goalies in the league, still had a really solid year. If you look at his stat line across the whole year, it's really good. One of the top goalies in the league. Thompson certainly has some great numbers there. Charlie Lindgren, pretty good as well. But they haven't been as good down the stretch, whereas Samuel Montembeault, had a great start, then he kind of cooled off, and then he kind of picked it up at the end. Now, a little bit of inconsistencies there at times as well. But generally speaking, I don't know that either team is going to have a real advantage in goal. I think Samuel Montembeault can probably keep up when it comes to Logan Thompson, especially to what we've seen as of late. Of course, Montreal infused with a new top prospect and exciting player in Ivan Demidov. I know the Habs fan base is super stoked about this guy. They had a record-setting day, the day that his jersey went on sale when he was first signed. They made, I think, the Habs team store there was over $200,000 in sales, which was a record-setting day. They never sold more jerseys for any player ever in that franchise on the first day they were available. So clearly, we'll see if he lives up to the hype, but so far in a brief amount of time in the NHL, he looks good. And of course, he's going to be going up against a player I'm sure he idolized in Alex Ovechkin. Could be a wild card, an X factor here. So I just get a vibe and a feel from Montreal that the stats don't tell the true story. It just feels like there's more there than what these numbers are going to show. Looking back, I know it's been a long time, but 15 years ago in 2010, we had a similar type matchup, which was almost David against Goliath. Washington, the top seed in the Eastern Conference, against the 8th seed Montreal Canadiens. They squeak in at the end, and they upset the Capitals. And then they went on to a run and went to the conference finals. They beat the Capitals, and then they took out the Penguins. Followed up by losing to the Flyers in the Eastern Conference final. That team was led by a young goalie tandem in Halak and Price. Halak played more that year. A young PK Subban as well, getting his feet wet. Didn't have as big of a role, but did have a couple of big moments in the playoffs. They were led by veterans like Camilleri, Giunta, Gomez. Plekanec, those guys were leading the way there. So, I mean, ultimately, I just kind of get a little bit of a vibe that it's a similar type of story. And I honestly think that the Montreal Canadiens are going to upset the Washington Capitals. I know my brain tells me it's probably not likely by looking at all the numbers. It's just a gut feeling, and there's always upsets in the playoffs. And I honestly think the Eastern Conference is more wide open than some people might think. That's why I think that even though Montreal and Ottawa are both in there as wildcard teams, they've been two of the best teams in the NHL over the past couple of months. And maybe it's a bit of a recency bias, but to me, their more recent play will dictate what's more likely to come here in the next little bit. Clearly, they both have a lot of young players that have not experienced playoff hockey yet, and they have a few veterans mixed in there as well to kind of help offset some of that leadership. But you know what? Sometimes not knowing, you just kind of go in blind and you're just going in to play hockey and you don't feel like you have any pressure. You're playing with house money here. The pressure is on the top teams, not to get beat out early. So, in all honesty, they got nothing to lose. They're young, they're skilled, they're fast, and I think that we're going to see an upset here. I think this Capitals team just might run out of gas and fall to the Canadiens. So, I'm going to say Habs probably in 6 or 7. I'll say 7 games. I just think it's going to be a closer series than some think. I know a lot of people and the odds makers in the betting world, a lot of them have the Capitals winning in 4 or 5. I don't see it going down that way, but let me know what you think. Now let's take a look at the Western Conference, and we'll start with the Central Division, looking at the Winnipeg Jets versus the St. Louis Blues, the President's Trophy winners against wild card number 2 here. The Blues, although have been one of the hottest teams in the league since the Four Nation break, and had a major winning streak to even have a chance to be in these playoffs. But let's take a look at these teams by the numbers. Goals for 3.37 per game for Winnipeg, which is a pretty high-scoring team, against 3.01 for the Blues, so definitely edge to Winnipeg for being stronger offensively. Goals against 2.33, which is best in the league, compared to 2.84. 13th best, respectable, but major edge to Winnipeg. Power play, again, 29.4, best in the league. Winnipeg is you're going to hear that a lot, and is best in the league when it comes to this team. The Blues power play, 21.2, 18th best. So, again, respectable, but nowhere near the level of Winnipeg. Penalty kill is where we have a discrepancy here for Winnipeg, but thankfully, for their sake, the Blues are really not stronger, surprisingly. It's 79.3 for Winnipeg, which is only league average, to 74.2 for the Blues, which is 27th. In the faceoff circle, the Blues do have a slight edge, 51.6 to 49.4. But if you look at the goalie matchup, Binnington versus Hellebuck, Binnington beat Hellebuck in the Four Nations, but that was a different team in front of each goaltender, of course. Hellebuck rocking a 202 and a 924, whereas Binnington's got a 269 and a 900 save percentage. So, clear advantage. You can't say that Binnington has the advantage here. Hellebuck statistically has him beat, but we've seen last year's version of Hellebuck was not what we expected. I don't think Hellebuck is going to let that happen again, and we're going to see regular season Hellebuck show up in the playoffs. The Jets had a 3-1 edge in their season series. I said the Jets are the President's Trophy winners. The Winnipeg Jets are the best in the league in a variety of statistical categories, offensively, defensively, power play. I know the Blues have been one of the league's hottest teams for the past 2 months, but the Jets are one of the ones responsible for cooling them off as well. Obviously, I know Binnington will battle, and they'll give him a chance, and he's been tremendous since the Four Nation tournament. That certainly built his confidence up, no doubt. But to me right now, if I do have any concerns about Winnipeg, it's the fact that they've got some injuries when it comes to guys like Ehlers and Velarde, Sandberg. Will those guys be healthy enough to contribute? It sure looks like they might be without Ehlers to start. But I think the Jets are deeper, stronger, and are not going to want a repeat of last year going out so quickly in the first round. I'm picking Winnipeg in 6. Although this Blues team does give off a lot of 2019 vibes, and they're a well-coached team under Jim Montgomery, I think the Jets are just going to not let that happen this year and take care of business. Now, In the other matchup here, we're in the Central. We've got Dallas versus Colorado, which we can call the Mikko Rantanen Bowl. Of course, Mikko Rantanen made his rounds this year from Colorado to Carolina to Dallas. And look at that. He's playing his old buddies in Colorado in the playoffs. It's going to be an interesting battle for sure. It wouldn't be shocking if one of these teams won the Stanley Cup, and it's unfair almost to some degree that one of these teams have to lose in the first round. Now, let's look at this team here, break down to the series by the numbers. Goals for, 3.38 per game for Dallas, 3.31 for Colorado, 4th and 5th respectively, not much difference. Goals against, 2.61 to 2.8, slight edge to Dallas. Power play, the advantage Colorado. The Avalanche have a 24.6 success rate, whereas the Stars 22.8. So again, a decent advantage there for Colorado. On the PK, we have an advantage for Dallas, 83.9 to 79.7. So one of the top power or penalty kills versus a league average one. So again, that kind of could offset each other. Colorado's better on the power play, but Dallas is better on the PK. Face-off wise, advantage Dallas as well, 52.1 to 47.1. But I will say the Avalanche have made a lot of, they're one of the busier teams at the trade deadline, adding Brock Nelson, adding Charlie Coyle, and it looks like Landeskog's coming back. I don't know that we've truly seen this version of the Avalanche yet, and I think they're going to be better than people think. Looking at the goalies, Ottinger's rocking a 2.53 and a 9.11 save percentage, whereas Mackenzie Blackwood's got a 2.55 and a 9.12. So Jake Ottinger might be the higher profile guy here, getting more accolades, but Mackenzie Blackwood's numbers this year are just as good, if not slightly better than Jake Ottinger. Head-to-head, the Avalanche won the season series 2-1. The Dallas Stars are, unless I've missed an update, looks like Heiskanen is going to be out for Dallas. That's a major, major blow. Whereas the Avalanche are expecting Landeskog. He had a good AHL stint, and it looks like he's going to be able to play. Nishushkin, he's had some issues the last couple of years. He seems back and ready to go. They added Nelson, they added Coyle, which will help with the faceoffs and the other side of the puck play tremendously as well. And overall, I must say, I feel bad that one of these teams have to go out in the first round. But I think with all of the momentum between picking up Natchez in the Rantanen deal, and then with what they've added at the deadline, even though they don't have Mikko Rantanen, I think the Avalanche are a better, deeper, stronger team. They're going to be getting a major emotional boost from Landeskog's return. I'm picking Colorado to win this series, but I do think it's going to be tight and hard fought. I'm going to say Avs in 7. Now, lastly here in the Pacific Division, we've got the Vegas Golden Knights, division winners, going against wildcard team number 2, the Minnesota wildcard team number 1, sorry. So let's take a look at this series. These two teams are not really known for any rivalries, haven't met in the playoffs before. So let's take a look at the breakdown here by the numbers. Goals for the Vegas Golden Knights definitely have a big advantage, 3.33 per game to 2.74 for Minnesota. That's a major discrepancy. Goals against, 2.61 per game for Vegas to 2.89 for Minnesota. So that's a top 3 number there for Vegas compared to league average for Minnesota. Power play, 29.1, second best, to 21.1, 19th best. The PK, however, both teams not really great. 76.5 for Vegas, 24th, and the Wild, 30th best at 72.3. Face-off-wise, edge goes to Vegas as well, 50.3% to 46.7. And Vegas has owned the Wild all year, winning the head-to-head matchup 3-0. Goaltending-wise, Adin Hill rocking a 2.47 and a 9.06 save percentage, whereas Gustafsson will have a slight edge here, I think, on the save percentage-wise, but he is allowing more per game, 2.56 to 2.47, so a little bit more there, but facing more shots has a bit of a higher save percentage of 9.14. But all in all, I don't know that you can really say there's an advantage to Gus there. I think Adin Hill is going to be maybe even better. Like I said, there's one of the discrepancies between their stats is what they each face for shots. Obviously, Vegas is stronger defensively and does not give up as many shots. Obviously, Vegas is stronger than Minnesota in pretty much all statistical categories. We know that the Vegas Golden Knights are a battle-tested team, proven. They've won before. They're a very similar team that's won before, whereas the Wild just barely squeak into the playoffs here. And some of these guys Some of them are going to have playoffs for, don't have a lot of playoff experience. Some have a little bit, and there's a few that have been around a while and have a lot. So kind of have a wide variety there on this team. So obviously, I don't think the Wild can unfortunately compete with Vegas too much. I'm picking Vegas to win this series in 5 games. Now, lastly, one of the most, series I'm looking forward to the most here is Edmonton, LA for the 4th consecutive year. And Edmonton has owned this team. But is it the year that LA can repay them and take a series? Well, let's look at it and see what we think here. Goals for, Edmonton's averaging 3.2, whereas LA's at 3. So not drastically different, 11th versus 15th overall. Goals against, it's 2.88 for Edmonton, 2.44 for LA. So advantage Kings. Power play, 24.6 for the Oilers, 17% for the LA Kings. So major advantage LA. Penalty kill, though, different story. 78.9 for Edmonton, which is about league average, and 81.8 for the LA Kings, which is a top 6 result. Face-off-wise, slight edge to Edmonton, 51.1 compared to 50.7. I wonder who's going to get the start for Edmonton. With Skinner's injuries, Pickard has filled in pretty well here. I do wonder if there's a chance Pickard gets the start, but Skinner has a 287 goals against and an 894. Not exactly inspiring, whereas Darcy Kuemper's had a really strong bounce back season, 922 and a 262 goals against. So I mean, definitely major advantage for Darcy Kuemper there. He's had a real solid year. We know the Edmonton Oilers have dealt with so much adversity and injuries this year. We've seen McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Hyman miss time, and Ekholm is not expected to play in this series. Trent Frederick, who they get at the deadline, may not be ready for Game 1. Has only played a whopping 7 minutes with the team so far. With Skinner being injured and coming back, Pickard played well. Like I said, I wonder if there's a chance they turn to Pickard. I don't know. I mean, we haven't really seen what the Oilers are going to look like, and that's the big question. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking this is a year that Edmonton could lose to LA. And, will it happen? Maybe, and I won't be shocked. I am going to stick. I've been picking the Oilers since the beginning of the season to make it back to the Cup final. And, we'll see what round 2 or 3 looks like. But for right now, I'm sticking with them, and I think it's going to be Oilers in 7. The last 3 years have gone Oilers in 7, Oilers in 6, Oilers in 5. I think it's going to go back to 7. LA is better defensively. They're a much better team than the Oilers have faced in recent years. But I do think that the Oilers are going to be able to withstand this. And we haven't seen the true best version of Edmonton here just yet. I mean, we haven't seen McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman. Evander Kane hasn't played. Frederick hasn't been in there. I just think that they're going to come into the playoffs on a completely different note. We saw them last year limp into the playoffs, and look what they did. So I honestly think that they'll find a way here. It's just so difficult to bet against some of the top players in the world. So I'm picking Oilers in 7. So that is my full NHL round 1 preview and predictions. Let me know what you think. Join our bracket challenge, which is linked down below, just for fun here in the community. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. Of course, we'll cover the playoffs. We get all daily content for news, rumors, content on the draft, prospects, and everything to keep you up to date with the entire NHL. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.